Lynn,
Hello.
welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
You are fairly fresh off an event earlier today on shifting cultures in workplaces focused on neurodiversity. So I guess firstly, just a bit of a flavour for how was that for you today? What were some of the key takeaways you were giving people?
Well, it's interesting for me because Donaldson's was a host of the workshop in part, so it was a mix between Donaldson's and yourselves in terms
Okay.
of, I suppose, the practicalities, the toolkit that you provided as well for the workplace, and what people can do to make it a really inclusive culture in the workplace. So although Louise spoke hugely eloquently about neurodiversity and what that means and difference,
Yeah.
it's really about creating an inclusive culture where all employees can feel supported in the right way and listened to and heard. And so I think it was a lovely mixture of the sort of, look, this is how it should be, values-based, which we absolutely believe in. It's a values-based approach that we have, that people should be treated fairly and understood. And it's just not about that phrase necessarily or only reasonable adjustments in the workplace, which has really interesting connotations and quite negative connotations in terms of employers having something to fear or, accommodation's a slightly better word, but it's difficult. But language was a big topic for the day. And I think, so again, your colleague Karen had some really good ideas and thoughts about implementation in the workplace and having the right culture practices, and recruitment would be an example of that. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was very interactive as well. People are very willing to participate is what I was finding, because I've never been to a gathering before.
Right. Okay,
So to see a whole lot of people from so many different backgrounds, no idea really who's who, and the diversity of people in the room, I think it's brilliant for that as well, because people are just wanting to be engaged. There's loads of energy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
And what were some of the nuggets then that were coming away? Like if people weren't able to be there, what are maybe like 2 or 3 things you would say to people to help make their workplaces more inclusive?
I think in terms of inclusion, I think it's about just creating time and space for employees and to listen to all employees about what they need. And if people are, and some people are coming forward and saying I'm neurodivergent, it's being able to create space and time to be able to talk to them through what they need and what will make a difference, to make them more productive, more motivated, and enjoy and bring the best out in them. And I think that's really important to do. I think from a recruitment point of view as well, I was really struck. I mean, I've not been in frontline recruitment personally for quite a long time. So I think the sort of practices where you've got people coming in and be given interview questions. I've worked in environments with recruitment for so many years, and occasionally that would be a practice, but I think that's really important as well to do that. But I think on a very basic level, and Louise finds this everywhere because she talks to lots of employers, private, public sector, up and down the UK actually. She does workshops and sort of information. It's just absolutely raising awareness around neurodivergence and what that actually means. And the value and not energy, but the diversity you can get within a workplace to be really positive in your culture and the way that you work with people.
Great.
I was going to ask that from a leadership point of view. Scotland, SCVO have done quite a bit of work around Scotland's voluntary sector and thinking about the workforce in particular. And one of the stats is around 70% of the sector do feel well supported by their managers, by their organisations. So there's definitely something where we are good but could be better at supporting staff. And neurodivergence is an area where we are, in my kind of 25 years, I feel like we're just starting to talk about it. As a leader, do you think that this is an area that actually we could make really leaps and bounds quite quickly? Could we do a lot to help neurodivergent people within our organisations quite quickly?
Yeah, I think so. Because again, it was interesting listening to the sessions earlier on and what people were doing on there was a mentee for the session this morning. So people were putting up thoughts about what has made a difference within their workplace. And there was lots of it. And I suppose one of the main themes is probably you'd expect is flexibility. So lots of employers were offering a whole range of flexibility in the way people worked, and there were lots of different examples about how people affected that there. But you could see straight away that we as a set of organisations have got a really strong underpinning culture, because you can't underestimate that well-being, which is a big importance to Donaldson's, and I'm sure it is to you and everyone, is that to underpin that culture of well-being is critical. So yes, to build on that, I think it's important with any survey, and I saw some of your results. It's important to measure it, see what the gaps are, and then see what the actions are to affect it. And there's a lot of us, isn't there, in terms of membership.
Yeah.
You know, we've got a specific role and specific ambition around neurodiversity. So it makes sense, and I know we're talking to you anyway, but it makes absolute sense to work together, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And start to understand that and raise awareness and help people to understand what's possible. Yeah. But also celebrate what we've already got towards that, because I think as a voluntary sector, we're probably better at it than most sectors. You know, well, think about the private sector, they've got a lot to learn from the voluntary sector, I feel.
And I guess that's one of these things where you kind of think, oh, we're trying to make our workplaces more inclusive so people want to come and work in them. But these people are already here as well. You know, I think so often all our workplaces are full of neurodivergent individuals. It's just how well we're kind of talking to them and supporting them and making sure that they're driving that conversation. And I wondered if there was much came out in your conversation today around the benefits, because I think that is, you know, kind of touched on that, like how you I guess fully utilise the diversity of all those individuals in your organisations to make sure you're getting the best out of everybody, but collectively that they feel part of the, you know, the greater mission of the organisation. Yes,
absolutely. And one of the first words that came up this morning was creativity. You know, first thing this morning is what have we got? It's that creativity, and it's the use and maximisation of that creativity and that talent, isn't it? With any workforce. But here you've got a lot of different minds, and it's harnessing that for everybody.
So coming in, I'm going to just kind of move into asking questions around being members of SCVO.
Yes.
So thinking for yourself, this is your first gathering.
Yeah.
As you said, what is it for you? What's kind of brought you here, and what are you getting out of being that as an organisation, you're members of SCVO?
My people are really excited. So I just sort of arrived last year, and they did a stand. So I've probably been in the job a week or two or something last year. So they were really excited just about being here and being in amongst it as well. I think this time, having sort of been given and being allowed to do a sort of workshop as well as having a stand, again, people have put a lot of work into it and a lot of thinking around it I think it's really important for us to be visible. It's like all the charities, and to make a contribution and to grow awareness. So having the sorts of sessions we had today, it just means we're extending our reach. And I think that's really important. I think the networking's obviously really important as well. My people are just saying, I've been speaking to lots of people we could do partnership work with. You know, I really believe in collaboration. I just think it's essential. So just being in amongst it and being amongst the bus and the energy and being part of it, I think is really important as well, and learning and listening from stuff. So yeah.
And is that something you'd like to see more of, like more opportunities for collaboration, more opportunities to gather together as the sector? Because I guess, you know, there are people here from all walks of the third sector, voluntary sector, from all over Scotland. So is that something that you think would be beneficial more than even just this annual gathering that we have?
Yeah, I think collaboration is really key. As I said, you know, I think it's just such a huge risk for any organisation to be working in isolation. And I think it depends what culture you're in and what types of organisations. Some people can see that in organisations, trustees, it could be leaders see it as a threat or as some sort of worry about their existence and the fundamentals, because it's fundamentally you have to have shared values to collaborate, don't you? Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to find, and also we're all flat out, aren't we? We're all at the coalface. When have you got time to actually lift your head up and look out? And small organisations that are not that well funded, not that sustainable, and are looking after people, supporting people, caring about people, how on earth do they find the time? So I think, some of it, I'm always in favour of having events and collaborations. It's how we can do that cleverly. You know, you've been using a lot of tech today. There's ways of connecting, isn't there? And getting understanding without having to have a conference event to achieve that. So I think the more sort of responsive it can be, the more fluid some of the work that you're doing, and think about tech, the better, really. And so you'll see the join-ups more than everyone else as well. But I found it really interesting coming into the sectors as well, of going, where's the good practice sitting exactly? You know, these exemplars of good practice so that you're not reinventing wheels and duplication. And you could scale up as well.
Yeah.
Because you put your energies and your skills together into those partnerships. So I think we're seeing more and more of those.
Yeah.
But I think there can always be more done.
Yeah.
It's just hard work to do a good partnership, isn't it?
Yeah. No,
And collaboration, very hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. You've obviously talked to us a lot about the various leadership roles you've had and in different sectors. What's maybe one or two bits of advice you'd give somebody who's thinking about embarking on that journey themselves, about taking that step into leadership?
Into leadership. I think for me, it's always about culture. It's, yes, having a vision for your organisation, but I think it's creating the right culture, an environment for others to thrive and getting the best out of people. That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
There was another question I was going to ask you around this, about thinking, what's the best piece of advice that you've been given as a leader that you think you would say to the next, those kind of coming in? Is there any piece of advice that you remember being told, that stuck with me, that's something I'm doing? Because culture, as you said, is clearly quite key from you. So is that something you've learnt from your own experience of culture's not being quite as good as you would like, or being in a great culture? Where's that come from?
I think it's not necessarily about culture, where my head goes when I thought about that question.
Yeah.
I think it's going into an organisation. I think about that because, you know, there is an existing culture, isn't there, if you want to pick that point up.
Yeah.
And it's the generality which says seek first to understand. Take some time. Don't rush in and make assumptions. Don't rush in and think change is the right way to go about things.
Yeah.
It's really understanding and valuing what you've got first and taking proper time over it. I think that's the best advice I've got.
I think that's pretty good advice, actually. I would say.
Sounds good.
Just final questions for you. Thank you very much. We're just going to ask, thinking about 3 words to describe Scotland's essential voluntary sector.
I did find this very hard to narrow down. I've come up with about 25 different words.
Give us a name.
We've definitely had sentences in there as well, but yeah.
No, I quite like the idea of pinning it down to essential words, but I think vibrancy for sure, and diversity for another. And I think collaboration, actually, if I pick 3.
Yeah.
Great. And in terms of your gathering, your first gathering, can you give us 3 words to describe your takeaways from today?
I think buzzing.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of listening going on, and there's a lot of energy. I don't know what energy and buzzing sort of sum it up for me. Really feels. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.